At my sister's lavish wedding, my parents demanded I hand over my penthouse to her new family. When I refused, she slapped me hard right in front of the guests. Said, "Don't be selfish." I didn't cry. I chose revenge that would silence them forever. My name is Madeline Carson, 29, and I never thought my success would become my greatest liability. The penthouse I'd sacrificed everything for became the center of family warfare at my sister Brooke's wedding. When my parents demanded I sign it over to the newlyweds, my refusal earned me a stinging slap from my mother that echoed through the reception hall. "Don't be selfish," she hissed as guests stared. I didn't cry or scream. Instead, that slap awakened something in me. My revenge would echo through their lives forever. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up against family who tried to take what you worked for. Growing up in a middle-class Boston suburb, the dynamics in the Carson family were clear from the beginning. I was the responsible one, while my sister Brooke was the undisputed golden child. 3 years younger than me, Brooke had a natural charm that captivated everyone, especially our parents. Diana and Robert Carson weren't terrible parents. They provided a stable home and encouraged education, but the favoritism was undeniable. When report cards came home, my straight A's were expected, while Brooke's passing grades were celebrated. When I won academic competitions, my parents would nod approvingly before quickly shifting the conversation to Brooke's latest social achievement or fashion choice. The pattern was subtle but grew more pronounced as we entered our teen years. College marked our major divergence. I received acceptance letters from several prestigious universities, including Yale and Columbia, but the celebrations were muted by the reality that came with them. I would need to pay my own way. My parents sat me down for the talk about financial responsibility. "You're so smart and capable, Madeline," my mother said, her hand patting mine in what felt like consolation rather than congratulation. "We know you'll figure it out. Your father and I need to save for Brooke's education. You understand, don't you?" I did understand. I understood that their retirement accounts were healthy, that they had just purchased a new SUV, and that my needs simply ranked lower on their priority list. Still, I nodded and accepted my fate. During my 4 years at Boston University, I juggled 3 part-time jobs while maintaining my GPA. I worked as a research assistant, waited tables on weekends, and took overnight shifts at a 24-hour convenience store during exam periods. Sleep became a luxury I couldn't often afford. Meanwhile, when Brooke entered NYU 2 years later, our parents covered her tuition, apartment, and living expenses. After graduation, I faced the brutal reality of the 2008 financial crisis. The real estate market, my chosen field, was in shambles. While my classmates retreated to their parents' homes or took whatever jobs they could find, I remained determined. I started at the very bottom, working as an administrative assistant at a struggling real estate firm where the pay barely covered my shared apartment's rent. For 2 years, I observed, learned, and positioned myself for opportunity. When the market began to recover, I had developed enough industry knowledge and connections to secure a junior agent position. My work ethic became legendary in the office: to arrive, last to leave, always available for clients. By 27, I had climbed to become one of the top producing agents in Boston's luxury market. The Penthouse represented everything I had worked for. Located in a renovated historic building in Beacon Hill, it offered panoramic views of the Charles River and the Boston skyline. At $1,800,000, it stretched my financial limits, but after crunching the numbers and securing a favorable mortgage, I signed the papers. The 1,800 square feet of hardwood floors, exposed brick walls, and floor-to-ceiling windows were mine, all mine. When I hosted a small housewarming gathering, my parents attended but spent most of the evening making comments like, "It's so much space for just one person, and I hope you're not overextending yourself, dear." Brooke wandered through my rooms with an expression that mixed envy with expectation, as though my achievements somehow belonged to her too. By this time, Brooke had graduated with a communications degree but showed little interest in building a career. She worked sporadically at fashion boutiques and PR firms, never lasting more than a few months at any position. Our parents subsidized her, finding herself covering her rent when she came up short and funding her frequent career changes. When Brooke met Wesley Pierce at a charity gala, our parents were ecstatic. The Pierces were Boston aristocracy, old money with the right connections. What no one mentioned, though whispers circulated in certain circles, was that the Pierce fortune had dwindled significantly over the last 2 generations. They maintained the appearance of wealth while quietly selling off assets to sustain their lifestyle. Throughout all these years, I never stopped seeking my parents' approval. Each achievement, each promotion, each milestone was shared with them in the hope that finally, they would see me, really see me. The validation never came, but I couldn't stop trying. My mother Diana, a former beauty queen who had given up a budding modeling career to raise us, lived vicariously through Brooke's social ascension. My father Robert, an insurance executive who valued stability and appearances, saw Brooke as the daughter who would elevate the family status through the right marriage. I was the steady one, the reliable one, the one who didn't need attention until I needed something from them. My penthouse became more than just a home. It represented my independence, my success despite their lack of support and, most importantly, my value. The eastern exposure filled the master bedroom with morning light that warmed the custom walnut floors. The kitchen featured marble countertops and professional-grade appliances where I taught myself to cook gourmet meals. The terrace garden, my weekend project, bloomed with herbs and flowers even in Boston's unforgiving climate. Every corner reflected choices I had made for myself, by myself. Little did I know that the space I had created would soon become the battleground for a family war I never wanted to fight. Brooke's engagement to Wesley Pierce unfolded like a fairy tale, at least that's how my mother described it to anyone who would listen. Wesley proposed at sunset on his family's yacht in Nantucket Sound, presenting Brooke with his grandmother's 5-carat diamond ring. When Brooke called to share the news, I could hear my mother's voice in the background already discussing venue options. "We're thinking June at the Pierce family estate," Brooke gushed over the phone. "And, Maddie, I want you to be my maid of honor. You're so good at organizing things." What Brooke meant, as I would soon discover, was that she wanted me to handle the difficult vendors, manage the budget spreadsheets, and mediate family disagreements while she enjoyed being the bride. Still, I accepted the role with genuine enthusiasm. Despite our complicated relationship, I loved my sister and wanted her day to be special. The initial budget my parents proposed for the wedding was generous but reasonable, until the Pierces got involved. What started as an elegant 150-person celebration quickly expanded to include 300 guests, many of whom were business associates and social connections of the Pierce family. The venue changed from the family estate, which, I later learned, had been quietly sold 2 years prior, to the exclusive Rosecliff Mansion in Newport, Rhode Island. 3 months before the wedding, my mother called me in a panic. "Madeline, we need to discuss the financial arrangements," she said, her voice tense. "The wedding costs have exceeded our expectations." What followed was a carefully choreographed guilt trip about how my father's recent investment losses and their support of Brooke over the years had strained their resources. Without directly asking, my mother made it clear she expected me to contribute significantly to the wedding expenses. "We're not asking for much," she said, though no specific amount had been mentioned. "You're doing so well now and this is for your sister." I agreed to cover the cost of the flowers and the rehearsal dinner, an additional $22,000 I hadn't budgeted for. The money would come from the fund I'd been building for a much-needed vacation, but I told myself it was worth it to support my family. My real encounter with Wesley's parents came during a tasting at the wedding venue. Elizabeth and Harrison Pierce arrived dressed for a yacht club luncheon rather than a vendor meeting. Elizabeth's scrutiny of the menu options was exhausting. Nothing seemed quite good enough for the Pierce standard. During a lull in the conversation, Harrison turned his attention to me. "Brooke tells us you've done quite well in real estate," he said, swirling his wine. "Managed to get yourself a place in Beacon Hill, I hear. Prime location." "Yes, I've been fortunate," I replied, uncomfortable with his interest. "Wise investment," he nodded. "Property is one of the few reliable assets these days. Liquid capital can be so fleeting." Elizabeth quickly added, "Wesley and Brooke are looking at properties in Beacon Hill as well. Such a suitable neighborhood for a young couple of their standing." The conversation moved on, but the exchange left me uneasy. Later that evening, I overheard Elizabeth speaking to my mother in hushed tones. "Diana, this situation is delicate. The trust doesn't mature until Wesley's 30th birthday. Until then, they'll need a suitable living arrangement that reflects their position. My mother's response was too quiet to catch, but the concerned look on her face spoke volumes. 2 weeks before the wedding, my best friend joined me for coffee after we'd spent the day addressing last-minute invitation changes. You realize what's happening, don't you? Ashley asked, stirring her latte with unnecessary vigor. What do you mean? Maddie, I've known your family for 20 years. They're setting you up for something. All this talk about Brooke and Wesley needing the right start, the right address, the right everything, they're going to ask you for something big. I dismissed her concerns, but a seed of worry had been planted. That night, I found myself walking through my penthouse, running my fingers along the surfaces I had selected with such care, wondering if Ashley might be right. The rehearsal dinner, which I hosted at an upscale Boston restaurant, should have been a joyful occasion. Instead, it became an uncomfortable preview of what was to come. After several drinks, Harrison Pierce cornered me near the bar. "Beautiful place you have," he said, though he had never visited my penthouse. "Perfect for entertaining." Brooke mentioned the terrace garden, said it would be ideal for summer cocktails. "Brooke hasn't seen my place in almost a year," I replied, confusion evident in my voice. Harrison's momentary discomfort was quickly masked with another sip of his scotch. Must have been Wesley who mentioned it then. Young people today, always sharing their aspirations. The night before the wedding, as final preparations reached a fever pitch, my mother found me alone in the bridal suite, organizing Brooke's accessories for the following day. "Madeline," she began, her voice adopting the gentle tone she reserved for difficult conversations, "you've always been our rock. So independent, so capable." I murmured a thank you, focusing on arranging Brooke's jewelry. "Your sister has always needed more guidance, more support," she continued. "Her partnership with Wesley is everything we've hoped for her, but they'll need help establishing themselves." "I've already contributed to the wedding, Mom," I said, a defensive edge creeping into my voice. "Of course, and we're grateful. But a wedding is just one day. Marriage is a lifetime." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You should consider how you might help them build their future together. After all, family is everything." The implication hung in the air between us, but neither of us acknowledged it directly. As she left the room, a chill settled over me that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. The morning of Brooke's wedding dawned with picture-perfect weather, clear blue skies and a gentle breeze that seemed custom-ordered for the occasion. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock, allowing ample time for the elaborate preparation process. In the bridal suite, chaos reigned as hairstylists, makeup artists, and photographers circulated among the bridal party. Brooke, naturally, was the calm center of the storm, radiant in her pre-wedding glow. When she stepped into her gown, a custom Vera Wang creation with a 15-foot train, even I felt my breath catch. My complicated, frustrating, beloved sister looked like something from a fairy tale. "You look beautiful, Brooke," I said, helping to arrange her train. For a moment, the sister I remembered from childhood, before the competition, and smiled back at me. "Thanks, Maddie, for everything." The sincerity in her voice made me hope that perhaps, once the wedding stress passed, we might find our way back to a genuine relationship. The ceremony itself was flawless. Against the backdrop of Rosecliff's oceanfront gardens, Brooke and Wesley exchanged vows while 300 guests looked on. My parents sat in the front row, my mother dabbing at tears with a monogrammed handkerchief, my father beaming with pride. From my position beside Brooke, I watched her become Mrs. Wesley Pierce, hoping this union would bring her the happiness she sought. The reception began with cocktails on the terrace before moving into the ballroom for dinner. I had just finished my maid of honor duties organizing the bridal party for introductions, ensuring Brooke's dress was properly bustled for dancing when my father approached. "Madeline, would you join us for a moment?" "In the library." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten, but I nodded and followed him through the grand hallway into a wood-paneled room where several people waited: my mother, Harrison and Elizabeth Pierce, and, to my surprise, Brooke and Wesley, still in their wedding finery. "What's going on?" I asked, looking from face to face. "Is everything all right?" My mother stepped forward, taking my hands in hers. "Madeline, dear, we wanted to speak with you privately," as a family, about Brooke and Wesley's future. Harrison Pierce cleared his throat. We've been discussing the young couple's living situation. As you know, property in the right neighborhoods is essential for maintaining certain connections. We've looked at several options, Elizabeth added, but nothing suitable is currently available within their means. My father joined in, his business voice now in full effect. What your mother and I, along with the Pierces, have been discussing is a temporary arrangement. Just until Wesley's trust matures. The air in the room seemed to thin as I realized what was happening. Still, I waited, wanting them to actually say the words. Brooke stepped forward, still glowing in her wedding dress. Maddie, we need a place to live. Somewhere that reflects Wesley's position and allows us to entertain properly. Your penthouse, my mother said simply, would be perfect for them. For a moment, I thought I had misheard my penthouse. Just temporarily, my father added quickly. Perhaps a year or two. We'd pay rent, of course, Wesley interjected, though the amount he mentioned was less than half the market value. Where exactly would I live during this temporary arrangement? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. An uncomfortable silence followed before my mother spoke. You could take Brooks's apartment. It's perfectly adequate for a single person. Brooks's apartment was a one-bedroom unit in a building with constant maintenance issues and no elevator. The comparison to my carefully chosen home was laughable. Or, Elizabeth Pierce suggested, as though offering a generous alternative, you could stay in the Pierce family's guest house in Cambridge. It's rarely used these days. I looked at each of their faces, searching for some sign that this was an elaborate joke. Finding none, I took a deep breath. I'm sorry, but that's not possible. The penthouse is my home. I worked for years to afford it. I'm not giving it up. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Madeline, my father began, his tone hardening, you need to consider what's best for the family. This isn't about just you, my mother added. Brooke and Wesley need the right start. And I needed the right start too, I replied, my voice rising slightly. I needed help with college. I needed support when I was struggling to break into real estate during a recession. I needed parents who celebrated my achievements, but I managed without any of that. Brooke's face flushed with anger. So that's it? You're punishing me because Mom and Dad helped me? That's not my fault. This isn't punishment, Brooke. It's simply me saying no. The penthouse is mine. I earned it. I'm not giving it away. Wesley stepped forward, his aristocratic features arranged in what I assumed was his most persuasive expression. Madeline, be reasonable. You're one person. We're starting a family. Surely you can see the practical aspects of this arrangement. What I see, I said, looking directly at him, is entitlement. You want what I have because it suits your image, not because you've earned it. Elizabeth gasped at my directness, while Harrison's face darkened with anger. My mother moved toward me, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Madeline Carson, you will not ruin your sister's wedding day with your selfishness. This is about family. No, Mom. This is about respect. Respect for the choices I've made and the life I've built. What happened next occurred so quickly I barely had time to register it. My mother's hand connected with my cheek in a slap that echoed through the library. The sting spread across my face as shocked silence fell over the room. Don't be selfish, she hissed, loud enough for everyone to hear. I stood frozen, my hand rising to my burning cheek as the library door opened. Several guests had heard the commotion and peered in, their expressions moving from curiosity to discomfort as they assessed the scene. Without another word, I turned and walked out of the library, past the curious onlookers, through the reception hall where couples danced obliviously and into the cool evening air. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply left, a calm settling over me that felt almost surreal. As I drove away from Rosecliff, leaving behind the celebration that would continue without me, I realized something fundamental had changed. The slap had broken something irreparable, not just between my mother and me, but in my understanding of my place within my family. What they didn't realize yet was that the daughter they had forced to become independent had learned her lessons too well. I wouldn't just accept this treatment. I would respond to it, methodically, strategically, and without mercy. The morning after the wedding, I woke in my penthouse with a strange sense of calm. The events of the previous evening played through my mind like scenes from someone else's life: the confrontation, my mother's slap, my silent exit. My phone displayed dozens of missed calls and messages, but I wasn't ready to engage with any of them yet. Instead, I made coffee and sat on my terrace, watching the early light play across the Boston skyline. This view, these walls, this space that I had created for myself. They had tried to take it from me as if my achievements were community property to be redistributed according to their whims. By mid-morning, I finally scrolled through the messages. From my father: "Your mother is distraught. You need to apologize for causing a scene." From Brooke: "Thanks for ruining my wedding night. Everyone was talking about your dramatic exit instead of celebrating us." From various relatives: "Variations on family comes and you should be ashamed." Only one message offered a different perspective. Ashley had texted, "Heard what happened. They crossed a line. Call me when you're ready to talk." I spent Sunday in a state of suspended animation, processing what had occurred and what it revealed about my family dynamics. By Monday morning, I had formulated a simple plan. I would continue my life as normal while maintaining distance from my family until they acknowledged their inappropriate behavior. This plan lasted precisely 3 hours. At 11:37 a.m., my office receptionist buzzed to inform me that my mother was in the lobby. Diana Carson swept into my office as if the events of Saturday night had never occurred. Dressed impeccably in a Burberry coat and pearl earrings, she placed a small gift bag on my desk. "Peace offering," she said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Those macarons you like from the French bakery in Back Bay." I left the bag untouched. "What can I do for you, Mom?" She sighed dramatically. "Madeline, we need to move past this unfortunate misunderstanding. Your sister is devastated that you left her reception." "It wasn't a misunderstanding. You demanded I give up my home, then slapped me when I refused." "I reacted poorly," she conceded, though her tone suggested minimal remorse. "But, you have to understand the pressure we're all under. The Pierces have certain expectations for their son's lifestyle." "That's not my problem. Family problems are everyone's problems, Madeline. We need to find a solution that works for all of us." "There already is a solution. Brooke and Wesley can live within their means like everyone else." My mother's facade of pleasantness cracked slightly. "They can't just live anywhere. Wesley has appearances to maintain for his career prospects. Then Wesley should earn enough to maintain those appearances." The conversation continued in circles until my assistant knocked to remind me of a client meeting. My mother left with her gift bag of macaron, having achieved nothing except confirming that I wouldn't easily be manipulated. That evening, I met Ashley at our favorite wine bar. After filling her in on my mother's visit, she reached into her purse and pulled out her tablet. "There's something you should see," she said, her expression serious. Ashley worked in finance and had access to certain databases. I did some digging into the Pierce family finances. The documents she showed me confirmed what I had suspected. The Pierce family fortune was largely an illusion. They had been selling assets for years to maintain their lifestyle. Wesley's trust fund, which everyone kept mentioning, contained a fraction of what had been implied. "There's more," Ashley said, swiping to another screen. "Look at the date Brooke toured these properties." I stared at a real estate agent's showing schedule. 3 months before the wedding, Brooke had viewed multiple luxury properties in Beacon Hill, including my building. "She couldn't afford any of these," I murmured. "Exactly. So why tour them unless?" "Unless she already had a plan to acquire one without paying for it," I finished, a cold realization settling in my stomach. Over the next 2 weeks, I pieced together more of the puzzle. A casual conversation with my building's doorman revealed that Brooke and Wesley had visited my penthouse twice while I was on business trips. "Your sister said you asked her to water your plants," he explained apologetically when he saw my shocked expression. A college friend who worked at the architectural firm Wesley occasionally consulted for mentioned that Wesley had been showing people photos of his new place in Beacon Hill weeks before the wedding. The most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. My father's secretary, with whom I had always maintained a friendly relationship, called me with concern. "Madeline,